Well, welcome everybody to our first Pankey webinar that we're going to be doing. We're starting a series of these. We're going to do them Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at this exact time, 4 p.m. Eastern time, 1 p.m. here on the Pacific Coast, which is where Mary and I both are. Of course, she's in Seattle and I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, but this time of the year, we're on the same time zone, so that's not always true. I know you were expecting to start this and see Dr. Bill Gregg's face from Santa Monica, California. He's actually having just a smidge of technical difficulties right now. I don't know how many of you have ever used the Zoom platform before, but I will tell you that the fact that they were able to ramp up in the way that they have been able to over the last week in the light of our new world has been amazing. But I have experienced several times today that there have been some technical glitches. So hopefully Bill will join us, but Mary and I were part of the planning process for this. And so we're gonna get you kicked off in his stead. And one of the things we're hoping to do for the next hour is give you the opportunity to really do some brainstorming, do some thinking, and even do some talking, as best as we'll try to do this on the Zoom platform, so that really when this thing is behind us, and it will be behind us, you can really hit the ground running, and that you can use this time productively to really think about your goals, your vision, you know, all of the things we don't have time to do. We're so busy normally in our dental practices working on patients and doing the day-to-day routine that we don't often stop and spend time to work on our business, vision, mission, because we're so busy being in it. And so really the concept for today was to give everybody some exercises to do, some thought processes, to start something that I hope you will carry on your own over the next couple of weeks until you're back being so busy working in your practice you don't have time to think about this again, but of how to work on your business, how to work on your vision and mission. So Mary, I'm going to turn it over to you. So I'm going to turn my video off. And for those of you who've not met Mary before, I'll start by saying she's one of my most dear personal friends, mentors, someone that I've cherished getting to know and learn from over the last, I won't say how long, Mary, because it's not fair to either of us. If you've not had a chance to spend time with her, this will be a gift. And if you have, I know you're already going, shut up, Lee, and turn your video off so Mary can talk. So I'm going to do exactly that.
Thank you, Lee. One of the things that that Bill and I talked about when he was planning this, to have this meeting with everyone, is to look for ways that, I mean, everybody is disappointed. Everybody has had challenges. Nobody planned this. Nobody was prepared for this. There was no way we could have been prepared for, we personally could have been prepared for this. And so there can be a kind of, well, you know, what are we going to do until we get back to normal? And part of what I think Bill wanted to bring to the group is that what if after this we don't just get back to normal? What if this becomes an opportunity for us to begin to see things differently? If this becomes an opportunity for us to have this imposed quiet time, and being in Washington State, we've been a little bit ahead of the curve, not in a good way, on all of this. And so, and all of you who will be listening to this live in different places and are in different situations right now in terms of the impact of this virus on you, of this pandemic. But one of the things that we have in common is we're all spending more time at home. We're all not in, as Lee said, not in the busyness, the everyday busyness of our practice. And, you know, and as one dentist friend of mine said, you know, it's not like going on vacation. This is different, right? Because you don't know when you're going to start back again. You don't know how it's all going to work out. So there's some uncertainty in that, but in that also is opportunity. And so, so we'd like to ask, we're going to ask you to think about possibilities, about opportunities, and questions that Bill come up that I'd like to ask you as we begin to do something about. Maybe just make a note or two about these questions so you can begin to think about where does this take you? What's the next for you? And So one of the things to think about is, what can you think of 3 reasons why you chose dentistry in the first place? What was it about dentistry that encouraged you or inspired you perhaps to want to become a dentist? Just think briefly about what those things were. Because the reality is those things, those are about your hopes and dreams. Those were about at some point in your life, for some of you only a few years ago maybe, and for some of you many, many years ago, the things that motivated you to choose this particular profession. So just take a moment and think about, what were those things? What were those hopes and dreams? Another question that Bill had is, what kinds of things in the past have inspired you in a crisis? You know, we've all been through various types of crises in our lives. We've never been through this one, but we've all been through various types of crises in our lives, whether it's a loss of a loved one, or whether it's a business crisis, whether, you know, one of the things that I learned from Bill is that Dr. Pankey opened his practice in Coral Gables right during the Depression. Certainly not the best time to be starting business, to say the very least. So what have been the crises that you've managed in your lives, health crises, and what has inspired you in those times of crisis in your life, in your personal life? What are the things that that you have gone on for inspiration in those times of crisis? Because that has to do with, what are the resources that you have available to yourself? What are the character qualities? What are who are the people you have relied on? How have you used your own gifts and talents in previous crises? What has inspired you to be able to get through difficult times like this in the past? Take a moment and think about crisis perhaps that you've experienced in the past. What has inspired you in difficult times like this? And the third question that we'll have is, and this one is, I have to tell you, I'm attached to the language around this, of the language around this. What keeps you in a fog right now? What are the things that keep you in a fog? And that, to me, is that language of fog is just such a perfect description how I have felt on and off in the last few weeks. That fog of the fog of indecision, the fog of not knowing, the fog of so much that it sometimes becomes hard to see. Right? That's to me, the image of a fog has to do with things are hard to see. Right now, nobody knows what tomorrow is going to look like. Whatever piece of information that I read yesterday is probably not appropriate today. Just as we were coming online, I had a text from my daughter-in-law on the East Coast saying they were just notified that it's now canceled for the rest of the year. They live in Virginia. School is canceled for the rest of the year. The kinds of things that we're in this fog. And what are the things that put you in particular in that state of fog? What about you, Lee?
Well, you know, actually, Mary, I was popping on here because I'm watching the chat for you. And so we've had a request, if you could actually just go back and repeat all 3 questions. And you know, people have it fresh in their mind. And then we can give people a chance to write. So yeah, and I definitely agree with you. Fog is a good word for how I felt off and on the last few days, but I'll let you just repeat those so people have a chance to write.
I'll do that. So the first question is to think, what are three reasons why you chose dentistry as a profession? What were the three things that drew you to the practice of dentistry, that attracted you to this practice? I've often told this. I really like the idea, for example, of wearing a white uniform and white hose. White, because in those days we wore dresses and white hose, and so that really attracted me to dentistry. But what are the real things that drew you to this profession? Because that is about your hopes, your dreams for those times. What were three things that drew you to the profession of dentistry? Hopes and dreams. The second question is, what are three things that have inspired you in a crisis in the past? What helped you to get through the difficult times that you may have experienced in your personal life, whether that's been professional crises that you've been through, family crises, health crises? What has inspired you? Because that's what always helps us get through, is that what's able to inspire us at some of the darkest times. And the third question is, what keeps you in a fog? What are three things that keep you in a fog during this time that you've noticed about yourself over the last couple of weeks that you've been experiencing this process? What are things that get you into a fog and make it very difficult for you? Okay, I just saw a question there that said somebody got into dentistry because of me. That's nice, to work with Mary Osborne. But what are the things that put you into the fog? And I guess the part of that is that I've also been thinking about it since I heard this question from Bill, are what are the things that get me out of that fog? So as Lee said, she finds herself going in and out of it. That's why the image for me is so powerful, because when I think about walking through a fog, and I live in the Pacific Northwest and know a little something about that, about going through a fog, I see myself going in and out of that fog. Sometimes things are very, very clear. Today is a beautiful day. Our mountains our Olympic mountains are just gorgeous. We have blue sky and snow on the mountains, and they're just beautiful. But right below the tips of those mountains with all that snow, there's a layer of fog. We're not in it, we're not socked in it, but we go in and out of it. And I see we have Bill with us now. Bill, can you hear us and speak to us?
I can hear you and I can speak to you. That was quite an adventure. Can we blame it all on the coronavirus?
I'm pretty sure it was the coronavirus, yes.
Yes, I think my computer got a coronavirus.
Well, I just actually began by just sharing the three questions that you had created for the group about the three things that attracted people to dentistry in the first place, their hopes and dreams. The three things that inspired them in previous crises that they've experienced, and the three things that keep them in a fog while they've been going through this process. So yes, I'm going to give it back to you now, Bill.
Oh, well, I'm not sure I want that, but you've been doing great. Thank you so much, Mary. I'm glad you were able to clarify a lot for me yesterday. So now you know more of what's on my mind than I know what's on my mind.
That's kind of scary, Bill. So I'm gonna back out now and let you have the screen and the sound.
Okay, I'm gonna go down to the bottom because nobody really wants. Let's see how I do this. Share the screen. So I'm gonna come over here, and is the screen coming up at all?
Bill, your screen is up if you want to hit play on your PowerPoint.
Well, I'm not going to hit play on my PowerPoint because Mary did such a great job. I'm going to go down and just kind of start in the middle. What I had planned was to have some of these questions sort of scroll across the screen as we were getting started, and it didn't quite work that way. So I'm just going to jump in since I did hear a lot of what Mary did, and that was pretty good. I just wanted to reassure people because I know that there are a lot of dentists, but I know that there are a lot of non-dentists also, that usually when I do things like this, everything is for dentists, for team, for spouses. In fact, I used a lot of the things we're going to be talking about in raising my own kids. So these are applicable life communication principles, not just technical dental things. So I am going to scroll on down here and kind of pick up where Mary left off, because you don't want to see all the silliness. So does that come across on the screen now? This is sort of the summary of where I was headed, and Mary kind of got us to with respect to the fog, because we all get lost in the fog. So if you look at this schematic, there's a stimulus, and we can react, and we can have our judger from a stimulus. And the more we hang out in that fog caused by the circumstances, temperament, and objectives, that's the CTO, the more we get caught in this blindness, and we can't blast through to learner and hopes and possibilities and a response. So when we get a stimulus, we tend to react. The longer we can sit in learner, we can get to a response, which is what we're really trying to do in this situation. And the reason I have the I think, the I feel, and I am is because those are corollary principles. The fog is an emotion, and the more we stay within that, the more we can just kind of get lost. So that is that part of it. And the way to get through that is in a process called grateful flow. So this comes from a book by Barry Michaels titled The Tools. And grateful flow is when we spend so much time in gratitude that we can blast through the fog and see what's on the other side. So if everybody will play this game with me right now, I'm going to do this for myself because, as you might imagine, I'm in a great deal of emotion since my computer didn't decide to cooperate. So if you can think of something, and maybe this coronavirus stimulus upset fog is a good place, and we're just going to take a couple of deep, slow belly breaths in and out through your tummy. And I don't know about you all, but I needed that for myself with the upset of getting all of this set up. So that's a big part of what we're going to be doing, is what grateful flow is. And I want to start the next little bit because I personally want to take a second now and acknowledge Bill Lockard with what he's going through. He lost his wife recently. And I just like that mention and that thought to be out there. Bill is one of the giants at the Institute, certainly a huge influence in me, and I think that's terribly important. And this is Imagine from Strawberry Fields. I got started with this. I was listening to a podcast from Seth Godin, and he was talking about similar words, but didn't call it the fog. And the way you get out is to see how you can benefit others. So I actually wrote a little ditty that I sent to the Pankeygram about stages, phases, and chapters. Stages are those life things that we go through. You know, there's childhood, there's adolescence, we go through college, we go through dental school, we graduate dental school, and we reach a stage of significance. And those stages kind of are defined by a lot of psychological research. Piaget, Kohlberg, many others. We can actually think of Maslow with his hierarchy of needs right now. We're all forced down to the bottom level of feeling like we're just in survival. So the upper levels of self-actualization are hard right now. So stages are normal growth processes. It doesn't mean we're going to go through those in a sequential order. It doesn't mean we can't go back a little bit, but they are normal progressions. Phases are things that kind of whack us upside the head, and that's what's going on now. So I just wanted to share a story with respect to phases, and that falls into the next category, which is chapters. Stages we're going to progress through. Phases are things that hit us. Chapters are things we can control. So in my particular situation, 1987 was a very difficult chapter in my past history. That's the 1987 recession. My partner at the time had just declared bankruptcy. That meant that the bank came back to me and said, okay, now I'm on the stick for the total practice loan. At the time, that was $140,000. To put that in today's perspective, if you do it inflation adjusted, that's $320,000 in today's world. So my world was rocked. I had to give up the home that we had moved into that was going to be our forever home. We bought it with a second from the builder, and I went to the builder and I said, I just can't pay the second that you're carrying. In fact, the house wasn't even worth what we had bought it for. That's one of the major reasons I couldn't get a loan. So I was faced, and my family was faced with some very, very tough decisions. And we decided at that point we were going to reorganize our lives. I made a decision that I was not going to be a borrower in the future. Interest rates in 1987 were 21%. That was the practice loan that I got, 21%. So we made a lot of life changes, including moving into what we called our toy house. It was a nice little miniature house. It got us by. Fast forward 10 years, we had the next downturn with the dot-com crash. And I was very fortunate because I had the discipline to make life changes. I was not a borrower. I wasn't flush, but I was not a borrower. And then if we flash forward into the 2008 downturn, by then I'd had another 10 years behind me. So I had the 10 years of getting my life together. I had the 10 years of adding to that. And so the 2008 downturn was again significant, but it was nowhere near what hit me in 1987. And my summary around that is we can look backwards on the chapters. When I shared with Mary that part of my past chapter, she said she'd never heard it. And I realized I kind of bury that chapter. I don't think of it much. I don't share it much. It's really no longer painful. I probably should think of it because it is a large part of who I am now. But the key to all of this for where you all are is how we can write our next chapters. That's what we have control over, how we write our next chapters. So I invited some special people to help out with all of this here. So rather than listening to me blunder on, I'm going to go through a couple of exercises that I hope that you all will take seriously and share within your family. The first one is the bag, and that is for blessings, accomplishments, and goals. And don't worry, once this is over, you'll get an email with all of the attachments, and you'll be able to go through this, and there will be a little written part of it. Blessings are also our gratitudes. I chose not to rewrite it because that would be abbreviated GAG. And so I still like carrying around my bag. We did this with our kids growing up. We started when our kids were youngsters, 6, 7, 8 years old. Obviously, their blessings were very different than there are now, very different than mine. Their accomplishments might just be getting out from recess, simple things, and then goals. In today's world, I have reshaped that as gifts or gifting. I think the fastest way to get out of that foggy funk is to begin to think about how you can gift to others. So in this exercise, I would encourage you to think of blessings, accomplishments, and gifting for the next little bit. So with that in mind, I would like to invite Heather Pifferly to share how she's worked within that. And I'm going to need some help here. Lee, how do I activate Heather? There
Actually,
she
Heather
is.
did it herself, so she's on
Hey,
top of
Heather.
it.
She's
Hey,
more tech savvy than I am. Thank you so much, Heather. And I see there's no child on your lap now.
no, Ryan's got her and they're reading in her room, so she's
Great,
preoccupied. Yeah.
great. Well, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for the invite and thank you for doing this. This is really fantastic. Just even in my interaction with you just yesterday, you know, you're talking about the fog and how we get out of it, and just doing this exercise again, it refocuses you, it re-energizes you. And so I have to say that Bill asked my husband and I to sit down, and especially with the current situation we're in right now. And to be quite honest, I think your ideas of what your blessings are tend to change in a time of crisis right now. So we, you know, honestly, right now we're just like, man, we're grateful for life. We're grateful that we have 2 healthy children. You know, we both have our parents, you know, even though we have some health issues that just came up recently, they're still with us, and they're still an influence in our life. So we are extremely, extremely grateful about that. And, you know, just thinking about our accomplishments, where we've come from, and we realize, man, we focused a lot on trying to get our priorities straight with our practice. And you know, we've almost got our practice loan paid off. Like if things were to continue, we could get that done this year. So we're really happy that we've come that far, which leads us into, you know, into the future. That's going to be a big goal, is to try to get completely out from under the debt. But, you know, as far as gifting, I almost feel like I've had some clarity even right now, and listening to you and Mary. You know, this is something that I can really easily take to my team and who are struggling right now. I mean, everybody's filing for unemployment, not knowing when we're going to come back. And that's a really hard thing to see people you care about going through that. So as far as gifting, man, I really hope that I can cohesively put some of these tools that you are teaching us and try to give back to the team and help them through this level of crises too. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And there's many, many ways, and maybe that was one of the questions that I had in the PowerPoint scrolling, is what ideas do you, participants, what ideas do you have in ways of gifting back? And we'll move on and do the next little bit, and then we can start sharing some of the gifting ideas, because I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I have a lot of specific things that we might do. So if we move on, the next thing that I had was a letter from your future self. And this is something to allow you to put today's fog into perspective. So I'd like to invite Erin Gregg to pop on and share what she did at the last E4, which seems like years ago, but was what, 3 weeks ago, Erin?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Am I on?
You are on. Thank you so much for doing this. I remember asking you if you were comfortable reading it in front of the class, and there was a little bit of a hard swallow. I can't imagine doing it like this. So thank you very much, and just imagine how much you're giving to everyone else.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. So I know, Bill, it does seem like forever ago, and it's hard to imagine it was just earlier this month that we were together. But so during one of our evening sessions, you had recommended that we write a letter to our future selves. I think myself and the other participants that were there, we were all kind of struggling with maybe like what's the next step, or where do we want to take ourselves as far as maybe our practice is concerned. And so when you had asked us to write the letter, well, when we spoke the other day, you said, can you kind of talk to me about how you felt when I asked you to write the letter? How did you feel immediately after writing the letter? And then after it all settled in, how did you feel? So when you recommended writing a letter to your future self, I would say my immediate feelings were, oh, this is kind of a daunting task. I'm not sure if this is really like going to be an easy thing to do. I was kind of doubtful on whether it would actually be helpful, but I had promised myself when I went to do this Essentials 4 that I would go through every exercise recommended. So I'll read the letter. And so, dear future me. So this was a letter, it was supposed to be to ourselves 10 years from now. Dear future me, Olivia, who's my daughter, is now 16 years old, and Eloise is now 14 years old. And that makes me just want to cry right now. You are working in a facility that you made your own, that reflects you and energizes you when you go to work in the morning. This was not accomplished without its challenges. And challenges haven't necessarily gone away, but you are happy. You are excited because you are providing care to your patients in this space, a place that you are proud of. And even better, you know it is a space that your team is proud to be part of and enjoys working in. You feel great pride. You may either currently have an associate or an associate that is on the partner track. I know great collaboration with someone that has the same philosophy and dedication to providing optimal treatment such as you do makes you excited. Having this help has allowed you to tailor your schedule throughout your children's growth, to be there to witness their accomplishments and take time to do other things besides dentistry. I know you value the experiences, so maybe you've finally dedicated some time to traveling. And I do hope you were able to put in that pool at the house. I truly hope you fought tooth and nail to build a practice life that has that balance. You did this for yourself because you are worth it. And so I would say after writing that letter, I was really surprised to find that I had a lot of clarity, and it made me excited and it made me happy. And really after it had all settled in, it really gave me a sense of empowerment, maybe a sense of purpose. And also I found it very motivating because I kind of had a direction where before I wrote the letter to myself, I felt kind of lost as to where I wanted to go. Okay.
Wonderful. And I very much appreciate the word empowerment, because at the last E4, several people, but certainly Aaron, was really struggling with some very difficult decisions that they were needing to make now. And when you look at it from your future self perspective, it's just not that big a deal, or at least you can see a way through it and around it. So I very much appreciate that. So that's about it as far as what I have to share. We have some wonderful panelists. Before we get there, I would very much like to thank Desi and Dylan at the Institute. They talked me through this part of the panic, but even more than that, they have just done, I'd like to say, yo person's job, just a remarkable job to get this whole thing going. So I very much appreciate all the help that they've had. And we have a group of panelists. If you'd like to put some questions out there or some comments, I'd love some comments about what people think they can do as far as gifting, because that's really what's going to turn us all around. So I'm done. Where do we go from here? Did you
All
get
right.
it, Reid?
Yeah. Well, you know what? Great job. So, and for those of you who are on, if you're one of our panelists, if you can actually turn your video and your on so we can see you, and your mute, you know, I'm curious because I think that, you know, one of the things that I will tell you I have been most touched by, most impressed by over the last week and a half has been our community coming together. You know, I am in most of the WhatsApp group chats that we do for the classes at the Institute, and my phone has been blowing up to the point where I like had to turn my do not disturb on. But it's phenomenal because I think what we're all going through is difficult. I think we're all, you know, in some way, shape, or form, thinking the same things, feeling the same things, having the same ups and downs. And I can't imagine doing it alone. You know, and so one of the gifts of being part of Pankey is the unbelievable community of people who you can reach out to, and today reach out to thanks to technology. And I'm sure that there's emails flying and there are texts flying, and I'm just seeing the stuff on social media and the stuff in the WhatsApp and all of this. And I would definitely say from a standpoint of the folks who are in the program, if you have questions or something, you know, you'd like somebody specifically to address, just type it in the chat. So that chat box, we can see the chat box. So we're happy to respond to that. And I'm going to actually kick it back to you, Bill, with a question from the chat box, but then maybe each of our panelists can just chime in for a minute and just, you know, give people a little bit of their perspective and a little bit of their thoughts. What are you guys doing right now to get through the day? But Brianne asked if you could just repeat, Bill, what the A and the G in BAG were. So maybe you should just do the whole thing again and tell us what the B, the A, and the G stand for.
That's what I get for trying to go through it quickly, huh? First off, let me reassure everybody that you will be getting an email with all the documents. So you will be getting an exercise of the bag. It's something that I email following almost every E4. The B is for blessings. The A is for accomplishments. And the G is for goals. And historically, the way we do this as a family is Thanksgiving is a time of blessings. So we literally take time for several days and just sort of list out blessings. And that more or less gets you focused. And as Heather said, the blessings of today are different than they might have been around the last holidays. And the accomplishments are critical because acknowledging your accomplishments is what helps you feel like you're a capable person, that you're capable of doing some other things. For all the years I've been doing this exercise, and I do have my list of accomplishments all the way back to 2002, and I keep it with me and I reflect on it. When you see what you've accomplished in a year, it really does help you feel like you're a person who can do things. It enhances your self-esteem. And then the G is for goals. And as I said, I think in today's world, the goals need to be gifting. What can we give back to people? Heather mentioned employees, and I forget where I first heard it, but one of the gifts we can do is a $100 gift card to a grocery store for our employees once a year. Just heard of somebody that we can put together baskets of snack bars and juices and things that are, and take them to the hospital and ask them to share them with the nursing staffs and the doctors, because you know they're very unappreciated right now. You can do the same thing for care homes. My mother-in-law was in board and care for years, and she's not with us now, but that was one of our first thoughts. We're going to take a food basket to board and care of just good snacks. So there's a lot of ways we can give back to the community and just not stay within ourselves.
So Bill, and I'll chime back in. So there was another, one of the attendees piped in here and said, had some plans for gifting. And one of those was to donate PPE to local hospitals or to dental emergency services. And I know that's coming up. And Marc, Clive, I wonder if you could speak for your wife on this behalf, being someone who's married to a physician right now, you know, as well, Bill, because you have a daughter that's a physician. You know, and I know that you all are hearing things from the folks who are on the front lines right now about this, that for me have shared some perspective, because I've talked to both of you about that. So when we do think about the fact that we're not using our gloves and masks right now, you know, will it make a difference for the medical professionals?
I personally think it makes a huge difference. And remember, the tiniest little gift, it's much more a gift of the heart than it is the actual thing that you're giving. But I'll tell you, just this morning, I went to the UPS store and mailed off a box to my daughter, who is a physician at Valley Children's Hospital in Central California, of gloves and masks and even our cavi wipes. So there's just so much that can be done. I actually have put in a call to the CMO of the large local hospital, offering my help as a triage nurse, if you might, in case they get low. My daughter was the first one who told us that we needed to stay in place. And what they did at the hospital was they literally sent half the nurses and half the physicians home to self-quarantine. The other half were actively caring for patients. And when one got exposed, they called one of the on-call nurses. So anything we can do about gifting all of our PPE stuff is just wonderful. Nursing homes need it. Board and cares need it. We certainly don't.
Okay. So Clive, what are you hearing from Nikki?
From Nikki, I'm hearing, you know, mainly what they need from the front lines standpoint is they need N95 masks and they need gowns. And those are, neither of which are used in my dental office. So, you know, I wouldn't doubt that nursing homes and other medical professionals are in need of standard masks and gloves, but at least from my wife's take on it, the things that they need in their local hospital are different than what we have to provide at this point. So,
Correct. So
having said that, my daughter was thrilled to have any kind of mask they could use.
right. So another question that came in, and I'm actually gonna pitch this one to you, Mary. And it said, for practice owners, how can we continue to reassure our team members who are mostly in panic mode now, while there's a lot of fogginess in their lives about the future of the practice and the likelihood of its survival?
You know, that when I read that, it touched my heart, because I I spent more of my life as one of those team members, as a hygienist in a practice, and I have a really vivid imagination of what that must be like for them right now. You know, I was noticing that some of the reasons that people, for example, were attracted to dentistry in the first place, several people said they liked the idea of autonomy. Well, you know what? Employees didn't sign on for autonomy. They did not. They didn't choose to be owners. They chose to be employees, and they didn't have an expectation this sort of thing would happen for them. And I'm sure in many of your practices, you have successful practices and people feel pretty confident about their jobs. So when I read that piece, a couple of things that came up for me, and one of them is from a dear friend of Bill's and mine, Bob Spreen's wife, Jeannie, who was an oncology nurse. And the question that she always gets is, how do you deal with people in a practice that really, you know, so many people are critical, and they know what the end is going to be when they're in that process. And she was working with them, and her answer was that they say to them is, we're going to help you get through this. We're going to be here for you. And, I think in some ways that's the most important thing you can do, is to let your team, you understand, let them know you're there for them. You don't have answers. You can't figure it out. I mean, we will be getting some answers, right? If the Congress ever made a decision today, there might be some answers about what's available, and there are some things that are already available. But that's not the most important thing we can give. I think the most important thing is, I'm here, I care about you. And we tie this into the gifting piece. What came up for me is, to whatever degree you can afford it, you do as simple gestures like that we're talking about with the hospital, the gift of love. I mean, to send an employee a gift certificate for a pizza place, you're supporting your local economy because they can get takeout food, and it's a treat. It's not about the meal. It's about a treat, about getting something that they can do something with. I was thinking about it, about my kids who are home with their kids, my grandkids and all. I don't know, like, do they still do tins of popcorn or that kind of, fun thing that you could order online? It can be delivered to their house that just says, I'm thinking about you. And I think the same thing is true for patients, that if you have patients who are, be thinking about people who might be lonely, who might be in nursing homes and don't have anybody to come and see them. They can't see people. We're looking at them through a glass now. What could you do? Can you call them, send them an email? Can you send them a little, gift of some kind? Thinking about people in your practice who have needs, whatever the family situations are for your team members. How can you just make that, I would say, can you make it like 5% better? Not can you solve the problem for them, but can you make it like 5% better? And I'm curious what others of you are doing in that regard. I think it's a great question. I bet there are others who have even way better ideas than mine, because you're in it.
Yeah.
Mary, it's interesting because just today, first off, we have a text tree with our employees. And I text them virtually daily. I took the weekend off, just telling them I think of them. That's really about what we can do now. This morning, I text and asked if they could give me the names of any patients that they're concerned about, because I plan to go into the office and write down phone numbers and just spend most of a day calling whatever patients they give me. That involved the staff in thinking about the patients. I can't ask them to call them, but I can call for them. And as Mary said, it's just a, hi, we're here, we're thinking of you. And Christine Shigaki basically said the same thing. I've been calling and texting patients just to check on them, especially older patients who are alone. Have been texting my colleagues to check in with them, and all of this helps. In other words, just keep lines of communication open with everybody.
Exactly. So Mike, Reid, I'm wondering, what are you doing? Anything different or unique that you're doing to try to support your patients and your team?
Well, it's interesting you ask, Lee. For me, I'm going to take a little bit of a different twist, because Bill and I kind of chatted via email yesterday, about just the chapters that he mentioned. And one of the things that I did right out of the gate is I tried to create a sense of cohesiveness with the team, and let them know that I didn't know all the answers, that this was a moving target. They looked to me for leadership. They look to me to always know the answers, to be on top of things and to be in the know. And it was kind of hard for me to step back and say, you know what, I don't really know. And I have to make day-to-day decisions and maybe week-to-week decisions. But I keep letting them know that we're together and that I'm going to do everything I can to keep the family unit together, if you will. And again, I don't have those specifics about that. And I've had to keep moving out some dates because our governor came on today and changed the rules a little bit. But I just keep focusing on that. And I also, in relating to some of the chapters in my life, is that I look at is that when I look at some of the worst times, if you will, when I thought I had it all together and I thought all the ducks were in a row, and all of a sudden 5 of the ducks fall off, and then I have to regroup and try to figure it out. And I like to look at it, and I think a lot of dentists can relate to this, is that we're on the go all the time, where a lot of us are drivers. We wouldn't be in dentistry if we didn't have a little bit of that in us. And for me to be able to have a time like this where I'm forced to slow down, and I look at it as sort of the theory of chaos and order, and you think about physics. And for me, sometimes I just need to let things slow down, to let things line up. And then the clarity that I have for the next phase is amazing. And I can look at that in even some of the recent things in my life. And so I'm trying to let my team know that, and even had a conversation with them today about how, you know what, dentistry is going to change in the future. And here's an opportunity for us to really open the box and look at how we can change. And again, I don't have all those answers, but I think things like pre-rinses are going to be the wave of the future. And, you know, I practiced back before we didn't wear gloves. And, you know, in the 80s, the whole AIDS thing changed thing. And who would have thought that we would have, you know, PPEs at all in dentistry, because in the early 80s, we didn't do that. So anyway, that's my take.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. So James, I want to get your perspective in here too. You look at it a little bit differently than maybe Mike or I or Bill, just from a generational perspective. What's going on for you with your team and in your practice?
And especially share your radical gratitude.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about you, Bill, with what you were saying. In 1987, I was 4, and I didn't really have to worry much about bills or anything, maybe an allowance, but that was about it. So, yes, my situation, and it's a little bit precarious this year with a building that's about 1 month in right now, and we're moving ahead on that, and we're hoping everything's going to keep working out. But definitely, you know, it's given me a moment, a lot of moments to just kind of step back and try to remember what can I do for myself to try to help remember all of the, like you say, all the wonderful things that have happened to us and all the things that are going to happen to us, and how can we just today focus on some gratitude and try to kind of build on some hope that our future is going to be better than our present. And what I've tried to do with my staff is, I guess, try to encourage them that things are going to be better, and yes, it's going to be different, and we're all going to get through it together because we're a family. And I've been really trying to, I guess, kind of be there to listen to them and make sure that I'm available for them. Yeah. In regards to gratitude, real quick, Bill, I think one of the things that I've really done over the last year and a half that has really helped me is installing some different tools and routines in regards to journaling with gratitude, meditating, trying to kind of maintain a little bit of calmness and equanimity, which helps to give me a little bit more of an even mental balance, so that, you know, we all have highs and lows, and we all have lefts and rights these days. And so I've been just trying to kind of ground myself, and like you say, to kind of step back and from stimulus to response, and how to kind of move through that as gracefully as possible, and with as little emotion. I cannot want to say little emotion, but I guess acknowledging that emotion, but not dwelling on it. So, yes.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that is really a challenge when you lead other people is to allow yourself the grace to also be in it, be human, and to feel what you're feeling, right? Because you know, we're all doing that, right? We're leading our families. Every single one of us is trying to be a leader for our children, for our spouses, for our parents, you know, for whoever it is in our immediate world. And then we have our teams to lead. And sometimes in all of that, it gets hard to find the space to say, it's also okay for me to be scared. It's also okay for me to have concerns, and who's there for me to lean on, right? And I would invite everybody who's on this, or everybody who's listening on Facebook, to grant yourself the grace that you too are in this, and you too are human and are subject to all the same concerns. And while you're answering your questions about BAG and doing all the exercises, also answer the question, who can I go to? Who can I lean on when I just need to have that, whatever it is, 30 seconds or 30 minutes where I need to fall apart, I need to like have somebody else help me pull it together? Who's that person? Like, who's that touch point for me? And you know, we probably already have needed that in the last week, and we're probably all gonna need it again in the next week or two.
And what I'm noticing is that if we stay in community, it's just going to be a lot better. That it's so easy in dentistry to stay super isolated and, you know, in your practice, just with your team. And please reach out, use opportunities like this to reach out to people and stay in community, because I guarantee this is going to be a lot better if we can stay in community.
Here, here, Mark. Yeah, we're talking about texting patients, which, by the way, both Christine and Bill, I think, is a phenomenal idea. But you know, who are your friends in dentistry who you can start a group chat with, and you can have your own little, you know, let's check in every day and see how everybody is doing. You know, one of the gifts I have in this is I hear from about every dentist I know all day long on email and text. But you know, those are great things to do for yourselves, whether those are folks that you went to dental school with, they're people that you maybe met at the Institute in an essential or a focus course. They happen to be the dentist across the parking lot, because some of this is geographic. It is a little different from state to state right now. You know, start a text thread or a WhatsApp chat for a group of people, and kind of put your own little group together, your own little sub community, and have people to lean on. So I would encourage that. With that, unless anybody has any closing thoughts, we're kind of at the end of our time we set out. I do want to thank every one of you who came on as a panelist. Bill, thank you for being the first person to go in our Pankey webinar series that we just launched today, and working through your technical challenges. Thank you to everyone who chimed in. We're going to do this Monday, Wednesday, Friday for the foreseeable future at this exact same time. The links and who's speaking are always going to be on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And you can always go to our website, pankeygram.org/webinars, to see who's coming up. They'll also all be recorded, so Dylan will get these edited pretty quickly. They'll go up on the Pankey Institute YouTube channel, so anyone can go back in and rewatch them. You can send the link to a friend or anyone who wasn't here with us today who might want to listen. And I'm gonna just end by saying, stay well, and stay in communication, stay in community with one another. From the, you know, one of the member of the panel who's, you know, been through several other interesting challenges, this too shall pass, as my grandmother said.
This too shall pass. And there are a couple of questions. So I'll be available by email, because there was a question about paying down student loans and so forth. And I know that's one of Marc's expertise too. So in the stuff that goes out following this, there will be email connections.